Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first parent webinar from the Brookfield Public Schools Special Education Department. I'm Gina Wygonik, the Director of Special Ed. We have Melissa Baldwin, who is the elementary supervisor, and we have Dr. Meyer Glazer, who is the school psychologist at Center Elementary School. So I'm going to introduce, as I did, Meyer. I'm going to let you go from here and tell the parents exactly what your topic is tonight, and I'm going to let you roll from there.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about how to support your child while they're learning online and recognizing that we're all in a really new situation here and that we're all learning how to do it. As parents, teachers, other school staff, everybody is trying to figure out this new mode of learning. And we really, as school staff, need your help to make it work. And the hardest part of what we're asking you to do to help us is how to keep the children engaged in learning in this new iteration of school. The biggest obstacles for all of us right now are that things are constantly changing. And children really don't love change. Children really like routines. So all this change is hard on us, and it's very hard on them also. And we're living with the whole COVID situation, and we're having ongoing changes about being quarantined sometimes, full-time, sometimes part-time, other times. And all this change can really bring a tremendous sense of anxiety, both for adults and for kids. Children really need to have fun, feel safe, and be social. And all those three big needs that children have are affected right now. And so we have to find ways to keep those needs right in the forefront, having fun and feeling safe and being social, even while all these things are going on, all these changes. So I did want to just put in a note that since parents are now sitting with their children some of the time and seeing the other children in the classroom, I wanted to kind of reassure people that children learn at very different rates. And if you see that another child is in the classroom, is really learning at a different rate, knows things that your child doesn't know, not to worry about that, because the ages are a whole range of more than a year in a lot of classes. And then kids have different ability levels and they just learn at different rates. So if you see that a child already knows how to do something, that is not necessarily any kind of flag that there's a problem. We hope that the kids, on leaving first grade, on leaving kindergarten, have a certain level of skills. But this year, things have been so thrown that there's going to be even bigger range of skill level. And fortunately, so many of our kids manage to get those basics that we're teaching them, that I'm always reassured that when we send them off from center school, that they've really grasped a huge amount of learning. And but it takes time, and it's all done at very different paces. So some kids need more help. Some kids need special help. Some kids, seem to come to school just knowing those things automatically. But what we're really looking at is that the children are trying and that they are practicing. We're not looking for a perfect product. For those parents who feel like, oh, I can't turn this in, I can't send this in to my child's teacher because it's not right, we really want you to send in that stuff that's not right, because that's how we see how the kids are doing. That's how we see what the kids still need in terms of our teaching. So, if your child really doesn't get something, or if your child is producing something that doesn't look like it's at a high enough standard to you, That's what we really need to see. We don't need you to fix it. We don't want you to fix it because then we won't know where your child is and what they need. Um, Practicing the skills that the children are learning helps them to become more comfortable. But they need a lot of practice in order to grasp these skills. And we recognize that. And so we really embrace mistakes and approximations. And we don't expect kindergartners, first graders to spell things out fully correctly. We want them to hear sounds and we want them to put down those sounds that they hear. And if they say, the word cat and they just hear k, t, that's great. We don't necessarily fix it. We go, what do you hear next? And we have them write it down and we don't say, oh, there's got to be an A in there because that's how they're learning. So, um, as you see these things, as you see that children are learning at different rates, it's very important for us to, as parents, to monitor our responses because you might panic, you might get worried, you might get anxious, you might get angry at times, frustrated that a child might not be learning something, that it seems like they're not getting it. And so we have to be really careful what message we're sending our children with our comments, with our facial expressions. Children really do well if they can do well, but sometimes things interfere. They might be tired, they might be hungry, they might need the information to come to them in a different way other than how it's coming across through a screen or in person right now. So always be ready to take a break if things are falling apart. Always be ready to say, oh, let's come back to this later. Let's do something else for a couple of minutes. Let's turn off the computer for a minute and jump up and down or have a snack, and then you can come back. We expect that. That's fine. So they don't have to be little model students all day, and we have to recognize that they are up against a very unusual situation, and we really want you to help them be flexible, help them learn flexibility in this time when things are so topsy turvy. So I'd like to talk a little bit about reinforcement. That's one of my favorite topics. Any of you that have sat with me and heard my spiel. Reinforcement is anything that causes a behavior to happen more frequently. So everybody needs reinforcement in order to keep going in difficult or mundane tasks. Rewards, praise, a sense of mastery can all reinforce that a child will do the behavior more often rather than less often. We're looking for an increase in behavior that we're reinforcing. Adults give themselves reinforcement. They praise themselves. They say, oh, I did a really good job today. I'm going to have that treat. They get paid and they have an internal dialogue that they've developed over time where they hear a voice in their head saying, I like how that came out. Children are just learning to listen to that internal voice. They really need our external voices and they need reinforcers of all different natures, which I'll talk about, in order to feel good about what they're doing. So, part of reinforcement means that you might accidentally reinforce a behavior that you don't want to see more of. We'll get into what that means. But let's say your child is frustrated and they were sitting doing a good job at their computer and they got frustrated and they start to cry or to complain or to yell or to shut off the computer, and you came over and you paid a lot of attention to that behavior. That might accidentally reinforce that behavior in a way we don't want it to. Of course, we want our children to feel like we're paying attention to them when they're having difficulty. But how you do it and when you do it may send the message that they need to complain or that complaining works or that shutting down works to get what they feel like they need in that moment. So we want to send the message through reinforcement this is the behavior I want to see more of, and to be careful about not accidentally reinforcing behavior that we don't want to see. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Children make a connection in their head. I was sitting, doing a good job, and then I got frustrated. I started to complain, and suddenly something good happened. I got attention, and I got a discussion about what I don't like about this activity, which let me avoid the activity. So we have to be really careful what the message is when we come over to support our children when they're having a hard time. I encourage everybody to support their children when things are getting tough, but we have to be careful how that looks. Um, if we come over and we're neutral when the child is complaining about, oh, I can't do this, I don't like this, then we're at least the attention that we're giving is not entertaining, it's not helping them avoid what they didn't want to do. So it's more of a neutral stance, and that's the best way to approach a child who is feeling frustrated or negative about something they're doing. Because if they can cause a whole drama to happen, that might be like, whoa, that was interesting. Next time I'm frustrated, I'm gonna do this same thing, and I'll get to avoid what I didn't like to do, and I'll get a bunch of attention and drama maybe. So we also have to be careful that we don't forget to reinforce behavior that we like to see. So let's say your child is sitting doing a really good job, and we say, oh, I'm not going to jinx this. I'm not saying anything. But if we don't say something, if we don't praise them while they're doing that great work, then they might start to say, I'm doing a good job. Nothing good is happening, except maybe they're having a good time with the activity. But when I stop and I start complaining or I just stop working, then I get a bunch of attention. So it's very important to keep reinforcing and praising even when a child is doing great, especially when a child is doing great. Um, we want to make sure that the children enjoy our attention and enjoy our praise. And because that's part of childhood, and that's a really important thing that the children feel like, wow, I'm getting this positive attention from my parent. And that they learn by doing what I'm asked, I get my needs met. I get this positive reinforcement. So, how do we teach them to seek our attention in a manner that helps them develop independence? Uh, we really have to, let's say your child is watching TV quietly, and you say, oh, I can get the laundry done. I can get all this other things done. I can get my job done. I can get a bunch of other work done. The message we're giving when we do that might be, by accident, might be, when you are quiet and doing a good job, you don't get my attention. So we have to interrupt ourselves while we're doing other things and go over and praise our children and say things like, wow, I got to cook dinner. Thank you so much. I got to have that important phone call while you were watching TV. Thank you so much. The whole idea, don't say it, you'll jinx it. Don't say it, your child will notice that they're not taking up your time. I think that's an error in judgment. I think really we have to be very active in praising them when they are really even just sitting quietly, because it really gives them the message that that doesn't mean, sitting quietly doesn't mean I don't get your attention. It means I get your approval. When they, start fighting with their brother, when they start cranking up the TV, if we run over and we start talking to them and we haven't talked to them the whole time that they've been behaving well, then the message is clear. As soon as you do this thing, yell, turn up the TV, you get my attention. So we have to be really mindful of that. Um, when they're on the screen with their teacher and they're doing well, make sure to go over then too and say, "Wow, you're doing such a great job. Thank you for doing that. I'm getting work done. You're getting work done." And so that they really understand that that's the behavior that you're looking for. Now, social reinforcement is something that the kids get automatically in school from their peers. And a lot of that is missing right now because even in school, when they're in school, they're not allowed to be as physically close as they were in the past. And so they're missing out on a lot of those fun social aspects of school, especially if they're remote that often would be so reinforcing that they would say, "I want to go to school because I get to see my friends, because I get to play with my friends, because I love that interaction with my friends." So parents may need to fill that gap in, especially on remote days, a little bit, and be sort of that peer or that social interaction that the child is missing out on by not being at school. Um, Kids at school look to each other to see how they should do work. And we encourage that at center school. We don't say no copying. We say, ask three friends before you ask me. We say, look at what your peer is doing. Look at what the other child is doing. We can't do a lot of that right now because the kids aren't physically close to each other. So when you're sitting in on a lesson, if you see that your child is not able to get all the information from the screen that they might be getting if they were sitting at a table with a bunch of kids, you might have to fill in that gap. You might have to, if they're trying to write an H, because the teacher's writing an H on the whiteboard, you might have to get a piece of paper and do some H's for them to really copy, because that's important modeling. So let's talk about rewards a little bit. A lot of parents worry that when I talk about prizes and money and tokens and toys and snacks and such, that their child will kind of go through life with their hand out, saying, "I'm not doing that unless I get paid." So that it's some sort of bribe to be doing the right thing and that they should just do it because it's the right thing. And I disagree with that. I think we all do things because we get solid reinforcements, which is what a reward is, actual reinforcements. We get praise, we get our peers' admiration, but we also, like for me, I get paid to do my job. I love my job, but I get paid to do it. Some of you get paid to do your jobs, and you get perks from your boss when you do an extra good job. And I think it's really pairing the reward with praise that really makes it meaningful. The praise is the most important thing, but when there's a little token that goes with it, it sweetens the deal and it makes a child say, "Wow, look what I got for doing this." I think that, what might start out as a very small reward, you sat in front of the screen when it was hard for you, so here's, 10 extra minutes at your favorite game, or here is a treat, a sweet treat, gradually morphs into maybe they did their chores, so they get an allowance. And ultimately, they got good grades, so they get to use the car when they're in high school. So, and then ultimately, they got a job and they do a good job at their work and they get bonuses and paid. So, I do think it's a natural part of life to get rewards, tangible rewards, and that asking little kids to do it because it's the right thing to do is really asking them to do something that goes beyond what we ask many adults to do. For rewards to work, we need to deliver. We can't, make promises that we're not keeping. We need to deliver in a timely way. So if you say at the end of today, you will get a, a toy car because you have done what I asked you to do, we can't say, "Oh, well, later or this weekend." Or if we say, "I asked you to, do this job for me and you did it, but then you messed up by hitting your brother, you're not getting your reward, then we're really kind of giving the message that what we're rewarding is not for something specific. It's really for generally sort of being good. And that's a confusing message. We have to be very specific with what we're rewarding, what we're telling the child they're working for, and that they get to earn it. So we have to be specific, and the reward has to be valuable to them. If we reward them with something they don't want, they're not interested in, the system is not going to work. So if you start a reward plan and pretty quick your child says, I don't really want that, then doesn't mean your reward plan isn't working. It means your rewards aren't valuable to your child and you need to change them up. You need to have a discussion with them before the whole day starts. Say, what are we working for today? And if the child says, oh, I want that, then you've got something that's motivating. If you show them three possible rewards and your child says, your system is not going to work. So if a child is having some trouble while being online, some kids, this system does not work great for. It's really hard for them to sit in front of a screen. They're not getting that social reinforcement. They're not getting that peer interaction. Teachers are verbally and visually directing transitions during school in a way they can't do it over the screen. They might announce a transition, they might show a picture of a transition, but it's not the same as the teacher actively being able to come over and help kids move to the next activity. A lot of these things, a lot of these cues are missing. So you as parents may need to really add them in to help the child make these transitions and to stick with activities that normally the teacher would be finding ways to get the child to stick with, something that isn't super interesting to them or highly motivating to them, but teachers have all these wonderful ways of keeping the kids engaged, and we are asking you as parents to help out to keep the kids engaged when the teacher can't do it through virtual mode. Um, so another thing is the teachers are also noticing when kids are getting restless, when their interest is flagging. And so they do something to change it up. But the teachers can't always see this through the screen. You can see it. And so if you see that your child is starting to lose concentration or focus, getting frustrated, that's when you can take a break. Or you could just say, hey, let's stand up and do this lesson. Let's watch standing up, or let's sit on a bouncy ball while we do this lesson. Let's have a snack while we do this lesson. Let's do something to re-alert your child in a way that it might be very hard for the teacher to do remotely, but that they would do in the classroom. You may want to mute for a moment, whatever the lesson is, and say, what's going on to your child? Really ask them, what do you think is interfering? You may figure it out yourself. And don't worry if you miss a minute of the lesson as a result. Everything in kindergarten and first grade are taught over and over. We expect the kids to practice things. We don't expect them to get it on one exposure. So it's more important that they stay interested and engaged than they sit there if things are not going well. So, if it's going to be a while, send a little note to the teacher by the chat or a text and say we had to take a pause. But we really want the opportunity for the learning to be optimal. Reduce distractions. Something might be distracting your child. You might need to put headphones on, turn the TV off if it's on in the background. If you have another child learning in the background, that it might be very important for you to mute that, or to have your other child be with headphones so that your child doesn't get distracted, because there are so many distractions and there are so many less cues on the screen than there are in person. In an in-person situation, the teacher can come over and be in physically close proximity to a child, less so now than before, but they can they can come over and say, hey, what's going on? They can say to the whole class, it's time for everybody to get up and have a break. You see kindergarten teachers doing this all the time. Let's all get up and do a little dance in between lessons. So that's really important that you fill that role for the kids. It's very, you know, not all children need you to sit right next to them during remote learning. And some kids do fabulously, completely independently during remote learning, but there are other kids that need more of the parent present. And some of those kids may be struggling with certain learning tasks. And so we're asking you not just to help them learn the task, but to also really check out what's going on with them and help them cope with maybe a stressful learning situation that they're dealing with. So I talked a little bit about some of the things that might stress a child during learning. The idea that they might be hungry or tired, or maybe it's just too much screen time. And so we're asking parents to help us out to help monitor that situation. You know your kids better than we do, and you know what they can handle and what would be really hard for them to handle. Very few kids can handle, such a long day. And so that's why we've built in all these breaks and physical activities. We don't expect any child to sit there the entire day glued to the screen. But your child may have a different level of tolerance. So we really want you to be able to gauge that for them and help them out. Let me talk a teeny bit more about rewards, and then I think we're gonna take questions through the chat if parents have questions. So I kind
Meyer,
of
we're gonna take those questions for the Q&A on the bottom of the
oh,
parent screen. It'd be easier than the chat. So it says Q&A on the bottom.
great, thank you. So let me talk a little bit more about rewards. So for rewards to work, they have to be given fairly frequently. So for some kids, one a day is enough. For some kids, one a week is enough. But for many children, rewards have to be given even more frequently. It doesn't mean that you have to give a physical reward every 10 minutes that your child sits in front of a screen if they don't like to sit in front of a screen. But you do have to acknowledge very frequently that they are doing the behavior that you want to see and that they're earning something for it, even if they don't get the physical reward at that moment. So let's say you have a child who has a lot of difficulty sitting in a certain type of lesson that involves the screen and sitting still. Um, if you want to reward them for sitting, first of all, your goal should be you will sit in front of the screen. That's our goal. That's what we're asking you to do. And if you do, you get this reward. So then we don't want to mix that goal of sitting in front of the screen with other things. So let's say the child says, okay, I'm working for iPad time. Uh, you said if I can sit through this lesson for 20 minutes, I will get X amount of time on the iPad. And they sit there for 20 minutes, but when the teacher asks them to do something specific, they don't do it. And then you say, oh, no, you had to do the work too. But that wasn't the original deal. You have to be conscious of what the deal is. And it's fine for you to, if you realize that you made a bad deal because you were expecting them to both sit and do work, and they said, well, I just heard that I needed to sit. And then at the end of 20 minutes, they go, okay, time for my reward. You go, oh, no, no, no. I said, I meant that you had to work, that you had to do the writing or whatever. then the child is going to say, "Oh, these people don't pay their debts. There's no way for me to earn these rewards because they keep raising the bar." And it's fine to raise the bar, but you have to pay off in terms of rewards when you have seen the behavior that you've specifically asked for. So then the next day you could say, okay, today we're working for what you're earning is this little car or a cookie or whatever. And I'm expecting you during this 20 minutes to watch the screen and do the work that the teacher's asking you to do. But you can't really change it up in midstream. You can't right in the middle go,
Mhm.
oh, wait, that's not what I meant. If you want the child to believe in the reward system and to think that it's something doable, they also have to be able to earn the reward, I'd say at least 3 out of 5 times. So if you have made a deal with them that for this 20-minute period or the 10-minute lesson, they're going to sit there and they're going to do work, and there's 5 opportunities to do something like that throughout the day, and they're not earning it at least 3 out of the 5, they're going to say, oh, this doesn't work for me. This system is too much for me. I can't do this. And they're not going to buy into the system. They're not going to be invested, and they're not going to say, I can earn this reward this way. So you may set a goal and it might turn out to be a little too lofty. You might say, well, tomorrow you're going to sit through the entire day and then we'll have ice cream with dinner. And that's legit if your child can do that. But if you know your child cannot do that, or it's very unlikely that they could do that, then you're setting yourself and your child up to fail. And your rewards are gonna be unused, and they're not going to be effective. So it has to be achievable. It has to be something that they use up. If I mean, I know that you don't use up a Hot Wheels car, but if you earn one Hot Wheels car one day and then the next day the reward is another Hot Wheels car, and you go, well, I've already got a bunch of Hot Wheels cars, that's not going to be motivating. So, using things like time on a device or a special treat or earning tokens or earning portions of a bigger prize so that it's still out there as something that they want to earn, and they're still working towards it, is going to be much more effective than saying, I'm going to give you this rather expensive Lego set after one good day, because then the child is going to think, I already got it, so I don't need to keep working. So you want small rewards that get used up, that you're at least acknowledging frequently with the child that they're earnable, that they are earning. So you can have a system where some people take those big Utz jars for the pretzels and they cut a little hole in the top and they drop little tokens, poker chips, or little plastic gold coins like we use at center school into them. And the child watches it building up. And it's important that you don't, if they've started to earn and once the jar is full, they're going to get a big reward at the end of the week or something like that, that you never take the coins back out. I'm not a proponent of removing rewards, because then the child will say, well, I'm never going to achieve that. I'm never going to get to the top of that jar, because every time I mess up, and everybody messes up, they take some away. So if they're not doing the behavior that you want to see, if they are working towards something and they go, right now I don't feel like doing this, don't take the reward away. Don't say, oh, I thought we were going to get that reward. I'm so disappointed. All the language that we do just naturally use as parents. Say, oh, you're not earning rewards right now. Oh, but be fairly neutral about it, because you don't want your attention about the fact that they're not earning rewards to be more reinforcing and interesting than the reward itself.
Mhm.
The child might say, "Oh, well, no, I didn't get the coins, and I'm not getting the treat, but I got mommy's attention, and I'm not having to do this job that I don't want to do." So when things are not going in the right direction, be neutral and just repeat something like, "Oh, we're not earning rewards right now." Don't get into a big conflict about it because we don't want to spoil the rewards. We don't want the rewards to become a negative. We want them to be 100% positive. And so if the child doesn't earn it and he or she is really upset, you would say something like, "Oh, tomorrow is another day," or they can keep earning what they've earned so far towards the reward the next day. But don't say, "Oh, wow, that, I'm so disappointed." Because we always want the rewards to be a positive idea in the child's head. I'm working for this. This is all good. And so if a child earns something and then we take it away because they've done something else that they weren't supposed to do, but it has nothing to do with what we were rewarding them for, they're also going to say, "Gee, I worked hard, but I didn't get to keep the reward." So keep those rewards separate, have other consequences, other plans and programs in place for other behaviors that you want to see, but don't spoil the reward by saying, "You did a great job all day. You earned this car. You earned this money towards your big toy. Then you hit your brother. I'm taking it away," because then you really damage your reward system. So there, I've gone on about reward. That's my favorite topic. And so I don't know. Are we seeing, Gina? Are we seeing any
What
comments?
we could do right now, if any of the attendees would like to ask any questions, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A. You can type something in there, and Dr. Glazer will be able to answer any questions you may have. If you would prefer not to ask questions at this point, I'm sure Dr. Glazer would be happy to answer an email at any point in time if you have questions. So if you do, we'll wait for those questions, and if not, we'll move from there. I think we have some shy attendees.
Well, as Gina says, I am always available. You can also phone me at Center School if you have questions. And I always like to talk about rewards. I got some books I can recommend while we're waiting for anybody who might have a question. One of my favorite books, which is about something we didn't really talk about too much tonight, is called The Explosive Child. It's got a little picture of a kid whose head is, it's like a bomb about to go off. It's a great book by Ross Green, who's a psychologist. And Dr. Green really talks about what makes kids tick, what's really the underlying, their underlying motivation to do well. I see a question here.
Can you
How
see that?
Yes, how to address helping online a child if the parent has to be working. I know a lot of parents are up against this, and not all children are 100% independent. Some children really need, some more input. So I think there's two things in there. One is if you really need to be in a meeting and you really need your child to not come get you while you're in that meeting, then what I talked about in terms of rewarding them or praising them for being independent is really important. So, for instance, let's say you're about to go into the meeting. You go to your child before the meeting and you say, "I'm going to have this meeting and I really need to talk to this important person. And if you can stay and learn and stay on your screen with the teacher during this meeting, as soon as my meeting is over, you will get X. Doesn't necessarily have to be a physical reward. It could be something as simple as I'll come and I'll hang out with you, or I'll come and we'll do a project together, or as soon as school is over, we'll bake cookies together. So you're giving them your attention, but you're not giving it to them exactly when they would like to have it. They, of course, are feeling a need at that moment. They might be frustrated. They might be uninterested in this topic that's happening. It might be something that's really hard for them, and so of course they want you nearby because they're feeling anxious, or they're feeling like maybe it's something that they just can't deal with. They just can't handle it. And of course they want you. That's a good thing, that they want you to be with them as a source of comfort. But if you really have to be at that meeting, then I would offer them something in advance. Can't be last minute, can't be after the fact. Probably doesn't work too well if you do it while you're holding the phone and you go, right? It's better to do it in advance. And then, if you have a compassionate boss or workmate that you're talking to, if you can say to them, I need to take 1 sec, and walk over to your child during the meeting and say, thank you. You could lip it. You could say, thank you. That's great. That may fill the child's need for your attention in that moment. They know that you're nearby. They know that you're available in an emergency, but they also know that they're doing a good thing by allowing you to be on that important work call. So, but then of course you really do have to deliver. You can't forget and say, get on another hour-long work call and then come back, because if you've really made a deal, you got to stick to it, or else in the long run the child will say, well, sitting got me some praise, but getting up and, saying, I need you right now, got me attention. Okay.
Does anyone else have any more questions at this time?
Just to riff on that a little bit, in another book that I love, which is Your Defiant Child by Russell Barkley. He's the leading expert on ADHD, but this book is really just about defiance in children. He talks about training kids to not interrupt you when you're on the phone. And so you do a practice session, which you could do with the work situation too. You could just call a friend and say, I'm practicing this with my child. And because you're going to interrupt yourself, and you tell your child, oh, I need to make this important call. But then throughout the call, you say to your friend, hang on, you go over and you say, wow, that's exactly what I want to see. You're doing such a great job. So the child is getting your attention during the interaction, and doesn't feel like, you're completely gone from the situation. And they're getting your praise, they're getting your attention, and they're practicing doing it when you're not stressed out. If you practice it up front, then, because obviously during a workday, you're going to have a lot less flexibility to address them. But if you practice it and sort of teach it as a skill, then you're going to have better luck when push comes to shove and you really have to be on that important work call.
Meyer, I cannot thank you enough for the strategies and your toolbox of suggested books for parents to read. We do have another question. It's coming over here. You see the chat went into the chat, Meyer. Can you see that?
I can see part of it here. Let's see.
It says, how can I calm my child down when he becomes upset when distance learning? I do not want to hug too soon because I'm afraid I will reinforce crying equal hugging.
Right. That is very tricky. So again, how do we comfort our child in a way, or deal with the situation in a way that does not cause the behavior to happen more rather than less. If they get a big hug every time they fall apart, they're going to say, well, that's working for me. I fall apart, I get a hug. Plus, if a child has a conflict with you, and even if you have to put them in timeout, this is a separate issue, and you hug right afterwards, the message is there's a cycle here. I get very mad, I lose control, I get a hug. That's not a cycle you really want to teach. The cycle that you want to teach is I get mad, I have to take some time out to chill, and then things come back to homeostasis. They calm down, and then later I get the hug, or at bedtime, we talk about it and we say tomorrow will be better. But you want to make sure that right after or during an upset, you're not doing too much hugging and fun or even high drama on your part. You might be very upset. And even that can be reinforcing of that behavior. So it's very important to stay neutral during that moment of your child being upset. Your child may want a hug. I would never say don't hug your kid if your kid is hugging you, but I would say not to turn it into a big snuggle fest. And so that they don't think, this is really the way to get snuggle time. So rather than do that, if they're hugging you, you can pat them and then say, "Oh, let's try this again. I'll sit with you, sit next to them so that you're showing them that you're there, you're present." You could let them take a little break. You could stop everything and say, "Let's take a little break, then we'll try again." But always with the neutral tone, without offering anything really fun or exciting once they've lost composure, because you don't want to start talking about rewards at that point. So you really, at that point, you really just want to be neutral, a little boring. "Oh yeah, I see. I was walking with a little boy at Central School today who just wanted to go home. And I said, oh boy, yeah, I know it's hard to be here." So you can be sympathetic, but I wasn't fun or interesting at that moment. I just said, "Oh yeah, yeah, wow. My job is to come to school. Your job is to come to school and learn." So to talk about it in those kinds of terms.
The attendees, thank you very much for those wonderful questions. They were wonderful questions. Meyer, thank you very much. Melissa, thank you much for attending. And again, this was recorded. It will be on the Brookfield Public School Special Education website. Again, if you have any questions, you are free to email Meyer, myself, or Melissa Baldwin at any point in time. And we thank you for attending tonight. We're really happy that we had attendees for our first webinar. And again, Meyer, thank you very much. And everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you.